I'm journalist Blair Hodges in Salt Lake City, welcoming you to another mini episode of Relationscapes, the podcast where we explore the shifting landscape of relationships, gender, sexuality, race, and more. I'm not trying to freak anybody out, but let's talk for a second about a disturbing statistic I saw. And this is a segment I'd like to call What's Up with the Youth?
What's up with the youth? What's up with the youth?
What up with youth? What's up with the youth in America today? Gang violence, drugs, and that kind of thing. What up with youth? What's up with the youth in America today? Gang violence, drugs, and that kind of thing, trying to make the world a better place. What up with youth?
Thanks, Corey Feldman. All right, here it is. This comes from the Center for American Women and Politics. Young women, age 18 to 29, consistently back Democratic presidential candidates, more than women in any other age groups, and more than young men. Almost half of young men, 18 to 29, voted for Donald Trump in 2024. Almost half of them. That's compared to just 38% of young women. And the scary stat is that the number of young women supporting Trump actually rose a bit between 2016 and 2024. It went up by 6%, 32% up to 38%. What's up with the youth?
What up with youth?
There's been a lot of talk about toxic masculinity and how young men seem to be getting red-pilled or becoming more radicalized. But we also need to pay attention to young women as well, which brings us to our next guest. She's a rising TikTok influencer and a public advocate who says that if we pay attention to Instagram and TikTok, this rise in women who voted for Trump wouldn't be so surprising to us. Her name's Jess Britvich, and she's had a front row seat to this rising phenomenon of social media content that's geared toward young women that seems to be apolitical and kind of harmless or self-helpy, focusing on trends like clean beauty, natural living, and even yoga and wellness. But then a lot of this stuff has actually been funneling young women toward right-wing politics.
What up with you?
Jess Britvich joins us to talk about these social media trends and how media literacy can help push back against them right now. Jess Britvich, welcome to Relationscapes.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. The algorithm brought you to me. You're one of the videos that started showing up in my Instagram feed. When did you start doing content creation?
Oh, gosh. Well, I've always as it's the millennial in me, I grew up with the internet. I've just always been on the internet. Okay. I started really creating content, though, in the sense that we kind of know it today. As I was formerly a social worker, and I started doing TikTok beauty stuff just as like an outlet, a creative outlet from the emotional labor and all of that from, being in the field. I have since left the social work field and am now working just more kind of typical 9 to 5 and realized how much, so much of this, what I talk about now, just politics, internet culture, trends, and just kind of sociology really is so much of how I navigate the world and what I think. And now that I'm not talking about it all the time at work, I'm like, okay, I need to get this out somewhere.
Yeah.
So I really started transitioning my content to more focused on this type of lens. And that's when it really started to take off. And it's kind of like, oh my God, I should have been doing this the whole time because I love it.
You're really good at it too. And I think one of your biggest strengths is there aren't as many, I think, women doing this kind of like in-depth cultural analysis that you do while mixing it with the kind of aesthetics of the typical thing that might show up on a girl or a young woman's feed, right? Like doing makeup and this kind of stuff.
Exactly. And that's what I talk a lot about in my content is how so many of these right-wing pipelines are introduced to young people through content that doesn't seem political at all. Mm-hmm. But yet it is. We live in this kind of hyper-political space where things that, I'm a believer that everything is political. However, the average person, though, isn't always looking at it through that lens.
Yeah, I think they think politics is like when we vote or something, right?
Exactly.
Like, instead of politics just is what we decide to do about people as people. Like everything's political in that sense.
Every single day. From the moment you wake up, the first breath you take to, light pollution, going to bed, like it affects literally everything. Yeah. So.
Okay, so you had seen trends of young men, people have seen trends of young men feeling unsettled with like economic opportunities or shifting gender roles, and they've become easy targets for far-right propaganda. And we see this in the podcast world. Mm-hmm. We see this on social media. And you're sounding alarm bells now because you're seeing more and more young women get sucked toward those same alt-right pipelines as well. First, take a second to describe what you mean by alt-right and what that kind of encompasses.
So, really, alt-right It's kind of a moving definition. It's really more of an ideology than like a strict set of politics or whatever.
Yeah, there's not like a governing board, right?
Exactly. On like this is the alt-right. However, overall, I mean, it just really encapsulates like kind of authoritarian rule, white supremacy, super strict gender norms, patriarchal rule, really kind of top down hierarchies in society. And it's really was originally, and I think the way the term was coined was from these just like really insidious corners of the internet that like 4chan and even worse than Reddit, 4chan, 8chan, just really, it wasn't as, mainstream. And then
they're the alternate to the right. Like we're more hardcore. We're racist and we'll say we are. Like
exactly. Yes, exactly. So now currently, the way that I define the alt-right really is, I mean, I think Trumpism is just alt-right these days. And sometimes I get some pushback on that and saying, or I'll say, Turning Point USA is very much encapsulating the alt-right.
Yeah.
And sometimes I get pushback on that and be like, you think that's alt-right. That's not. Well, I think that just shows how far we've shifted, really.
And I think when people do that, they're just trying to shift the conversation to irrelevancy. Like, instead of actually addressing what alt-right is, they're going to argue definitions with you or argue, like, whether someone counts as that or not, rather than talking about what it really is supposed to be covering, which is, like, racism, sexism, gender issues, all of that stuff. So I think that's just a dodge if people criticize you for that.
Yes, 100%. So that's really, whenever I'm talking about these alt-right pipelines, it's about the entry points to be indoctrinated to this more extremist, super right-wing ideology.
Yeah, and you call it a pipeline because you can think of it as, it's like in Mario where you hop in the pipe, you go down, and you wind up in another land. Like, where is this taking us? It takes us to a particular place. So you notice that there's entrances into that pipeline for women that don't seem like they would take you to that world to begin with.
For sure.
Let's talk about some examples of those.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the most common entry points that begin with content that seems pretty innocuous, but can lead you down some much darker paths of misinformation, anti-science, and even racism, eugenics, white supremacy, gender norms, all that kind of stuff. A big one's the clean beauty, or just clean in general, and it really encapsulates this idea of purity that starts with our products at home. And it starts with a lot of fear mongering and anti-science. So women will be searching, clean beauty. It's a buzzword, and it's a thing that's being marketed very much so to women right now. There's clean beauty at Sephora. There's, all these brands are saying that they're clean.
Is it like cosmetics that are like more natural or something like that kind of a thing?
Yeah, exactly. Certain ingredients.
But sounds good, like not putting chemicals on your face if you don't need them, sort of a thing.
Right, but that's the thing at the end of the day, is that everything is a chemical. And so that is a huge marketing term where it says clean, but it really means nothing. These are unregulated terms: clean, non-toxic.
Yeah.
Things like that, they really mean nothing. There's no governing body that says this is the kind of level of whatever that makes it clean.
Yeah.
And so I have a lot of people, there'll be a lot of fear mongering in this marketing about these toxic chemicals. But at the end of the day, it's about dosage. So water is a chemical. And if you have, have too much water in your system, that can be toxic.
There's the woman who died from water poisoning during a radio contest. I don't know if you ever heard that, but like it was a challenge to drink as much water as she could, and she died. She overdosed on water.
Exactly. So it kind of starts like this. Now, there are reasons that, women or whoever might want to explore clean beauty, maybe have sensitive skin, certain allergies, whatever it may be. But the thing is with these marketing terms is that it starts to demonize science and really starts to sow seeds of distrust in our regulating bodies. And so the entry point is just, clean beauty. Oh, I have sensitive skin. I want to try to find something that has less harsh chemicals, perhaps. But then soon, because of the algorithm, and that's the big thing that I talk about, it's not just, oh, I'm interested in clean beauty. All of a sudden, I'm on the path towards the alt-right. What I'm really talking about is the algorithm. The algorithm loves the alt-right pipeline because alt-right messaging thrives on a lack of nuance. It's misinformation. It's emotion-based. It's fear-based. And that's what short-form algorithms love.
Yeah, like social media companies want to keep your eyeballs, right? So they're gonna serve you up the content that they think is gonna make you stick around, and it's not random. It's like this stuff keeps people on. So you start watching this video, we're gonna serve you this one, then this one, then this one. That's the algorithm.
Exactly. And this has even been proven through studies on YouTube's auto-suggest feature and things like that. So through the clean beauty alt-right pipeline, it starts very simply with, searching clean beauty, but then soon you're starting to get fed other things that are really kind of anti-science and really starts to lead towards anti-vax rhetoric.
Yeah, that's chemicals.
Yeah, exactly. It's and it's anti-science and it's just misinformation.
And you see it with clean eating too, right? Like they're saying, oh, these
Yes.
particular food dyes or something. And sure, like we can all eat more healthy, and
100%.
neither of us want to discount that. I know, I've seen your content, but when there becomes an overfixation on it, combined with skepticism and doubt toward actual specialists who are trained in chemistry and trained in food and nutrition, and it's
Yes.
ignoring those people and saying, we actually know better, anti-institutionalism, that's where it takes you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And this is where it is too, this anti-institutionalism as well as individualism. And that's what all of a lot of this messaging is. And I think it's a way that people feel, and I think why it's so attractive to people is it makes people feel like they have some type of control over things because it says, oh, if you just eat X, Y, and Z, you can cure your hyperthyroidism
And
or
take
whatever
the
it is.
supplement too. By the way, 20% off. Use my discount
Which I'm
code.
selling, link in my bio.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's these grifters who are spewing misinformation in order to just make a buck and are really sowing seeds of doubt about these different larger things that really are meant to keep us safe. And also it puts the onus on the individual without critiquing larger systems that actually are the result of why maybe our food isn't the healthiest as other countries, or why, people are getting more sick these days, or, it talks nothing about universal health care or the environment or, the toxins in our air.
Or how different communities have access to different qualities of food
100%.
based on socioeconomics, based on race, all of that.
And don't be, fooled. This is 100% a white woman pipeline.
Yeah.
It's very much, that's what it's, that's the target market.
Right. That connects us to tradwife content too. And this is a different pipeline entrance. Talk about how that, I think some of the popularity of tradwife is a little bit voyeuristic where people are like, this is kind of bonkers. I'm going to watch this. And other people kind of start to buy into the kind of ideas it's promulgating, which is, again, an individualistic, back to our roots, more natural way of living, put on gender roles.
Yes. And so the definition of trad wife, it's short for traditional wife. That's kind of been coined on internet culture. And it is this idea that women are pre-described to have certain roles in the home, and that it's very much the return to the nuclear family, that this is what is going to give you fulfillment. Women are to be home. They're to be making the home. They're to be providing for the husband. The husband is the one going out and doing the hunting and gathering. It's like these very primal, just it's gender essentialism, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah. No career and education needed if you're supposed to be home cooking the meals and taking care of all the babies.
And barefoot and pregnant and, all of that. Here's the thing. It's a lot of these trad wife influencers know how to market themselves. And here's the other thing. These super popular trad wife influencers on the internet, they are not trad wives. They are entrepreneurs bringing in lots of money through views and AdSense. So they're selling this lifestyle that they don't even participate in themselves. But for the viewer, they're able to view it in this very aesthetic way. They're waking up, they're cooking bread from scratch and going out to their chicken and whatever, and, caring for their cute little, always blonde-haired, blue-eyed babies, which, we can get into. But it's people, I think, view this very aesthetic content. And absolutely, women are exhausted. Because we don't have support systems here in the United States for women.
Boy, it can look nice, right? If you're in sort of like girl boss mentality and you're like trying to kick ass in corporate America, and it kind of sucks. It sucks for everybody out there. How nice would it be to just go back home and bake some bread?
100%.
Like that sounds good to me.
And that's how it's sold. But the idea is, instead of critiquing capitalism, it says, oh, look at how things used to be. Let's go back to your prescribed role in life. Well, go ask your grandma and your great grandma if they really had that great of a life, because I'll tell you, mine didn't.
Or like any people of color, or any
Yes.
Most people never fit into the illusion. Okay, so that's and again, one way that trends into alt-rightness is it is whiteness. It's very white. The politics are very individualistic. It's sort of anti-collectivism, all of that. Okay, so there's a new one that's just come across my radar, because the algorithm's not going to serve this up to me, and I only found out about it because of seeing videos like yours, but this is skinny talk, and this is new to me. So talk about skinny talk.
So skinny talk is, oh gosh, exactly as it sounds. It's tips for weight loss for women. And it's really a response to, a lot of times, the body positivity movement. We're seeing this pendulum of really shifting back towards, oh my gosh, these really extreme expectations of what women's bodies are supposed to look like. And it's thin. It's thin, thin, thin. We're seeing people who were co-opting bodies of trends that were often, of Black women. We're getting the BBLs, we're getting the lip filler. Now we're seeing people removing their filler. They're trying to get as skinny as possible. It's really from, we see Ozempic, just we could talk about that, forever. And it's very much, gosh, reminiscent of 2000s Pro-Ana. Are you familiar at all with like Pro-Ana websites or anything?
No.
This was like the early 2000s, 2010s. And these were blogs. They were Pro-Ana blogs, and it stands for pro-anorexia. And it would be people sharing tips about how to fuel these eating disorders. It's really scary. And I hate to say I dabbled whenever I was young as well, too. And that's really, it's this rebranded Pro-Ana stuff. And the thing is, the way all of these things are branded and marketed online through these algorithms is a lot of times as empowerment. And that's what I find really scary. We see it with the trad wife stuff. It's empowering to be back to your roots of, whatever. And then we see it a lot with the skinny talk stuff. It's empowering to take control of your body and be proud of your body and blah, 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 blah. But it's really dangerous. It's really scary. And it just sows the seed for a lot more insidious implications.
It ties people into a very judgmental attitude about their own bodies and about other people's bodies that serves the interests of people who want to sell you products, to be skinny or to look skinny.
Absolutely.
It's trendiness. And that's not necessarily a right-wing thing traditionally, right? Like that's something that any woman, regardless of kind of the political air she breathed as she was raised, can fall into that. And I think that's another danger of this pipeline. And that connects to New Age spirituality as an entrance, too, because that's typically not a conservative, that's not coming out of conservatism, right?
Well, that's what a lot of these things started as more left-wing trends, especially when we're looking at, a lot of these things were connected to like environmentalism, especially when it comes to like the homemaking and the environment, the natural living, all that kind of stuff.
And Mother Earth spirituality, sort of the granola stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And same with these very hippie. But I think that really the spirituality side of things really got co-opted through QAnon. The connection there is wild, and I still don't fully understand how those two subgenres kind of collided, but they really go hand in hand, especially with COVID.
Have you heard of the Conspirituality podcast?
Yes.
They do a great job of explaining how like yoga circles and sort of these wellness people just have a very conspiratorial way of viewing the world, of sort of, we have this isolated truth, but there's also these underhanded systems that are trying to get us. And so it's a conspiracy mindset through a spiritual lens, and it connected right in with QAnon because that's conspiracy theory 101. There's a secret cabal of evil leftists who are controlling the world and eating babies.
And eating babies, the adrenochrome or whatever.
Yeah, I got my cup of adrenochrome right here, by the way. It's delicious.
Right. Yeah, my Dunkin'.
It's a mix-in at Dunkin'.
Whenever I try to explain to anybody who is not familiar with QAnon, which I am envious of someone at this point in 2025 who is not familiar. But I actually had this discussion with my coworkers recently, and I explained this to them, and they're like, "What? Like, these has to be?" I'm like, "No, this is a huge fraction of the population who believe this.
There's millions of people, You sound like a crazy person trying to describe it. It's like, what? There's no way that people would believe that. But they do.
I know.
Okay, so New Age spirituality merges with, again, this is a merging of like who you might assume would be kind of leftist. It's the same in those New Age spirituality circles against vaccines, against big pharma. It's, again, gets back into these conspiracy theories and false views of what natural stuff for our bodies is.
Yes. That's what a lot of this content tends, I think for women especially, that tends to be like the entry point to the super right wing. It's the MAHA movement. MAHA has recruited so...
Make America Healthy Again.
Yes, it's RFK Jr.'s platform. And it's done just a number on recruiting young women to the right wing because of this idea of wanting to, it sounds great, you want to make yourself healthier, but it demonizes so many things. I mean, even from SSRIs, medication, even going back to like natural birthing and like anti-epidurals and just, it's really just anti-modern medicine in general. And while 100% there is room to critique modern medicine, there's so much room to critique our current medical system. But instead of actually critiquing the system,
Yeah.
it's critiquing the science, and it's putting on these individual. It's so much. It never critiques the system. It's about
No.
critiquing your individual choices.
And it props up a supplement industry that's actually
Yes.
as lucrative, actually sort of more lucrative than what we
More.
call big pharma as well.
Well, the big pharma is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Big wellness is a multi-trillion-dollar industry. Trillion. And it's unregulated. It's full with just misinformation and grifters and things that are actually going to make you more sick. And that's what I think is so, oh my God, just infuriating, honestly, is to see women turn to the internet because they're frustrated with systems. They can't get the support that they need. They can't get the help that they need. So they turn to the internet for answers. And there's these individuals, these grifters who are capitalizing on that, who are feeding you information that is actually going to make you more sick.
Yeah.
And so women, people in general, are going to the internet to find something to help cure an ailment of theirs and are being fed misinformation that is then worsening the problem. And I just think that's unforgivable.
One of the things that scares me the most about it is that you can enter through any of these pipelines, and there's more, and people can follow you on your TikTok and Instagram at Jess Britvich to hear more of these pipelines. But you can enter in on any one of these and not even have to care about any of the other pipeline entrances. You don't even have to be aware of them. So someone might vote for Trump because they know he teamed up with RFK Jr. And they might even not even like Donald Trump. They might have a problem with him, but they're like, okay, well, at least there's this. So I'm going to put myself here in this camp and dismiss all the other stuff. I'm going to not talk about the Epstein files. I'm not talking about the sexual assault allegations and the criminal convictions and the stealing of government documents, et cetera, et cetera.
Turning over Roe v. Wade, like with a court that he stacked.
Well, and locally in my own state, I can vote to try to preserve Roe v. Wade and pretend like the national ban is impossible, even though we know that that's a goal.
That's the plan.
That's what scares me, is that social media allows us to isolate ourselves in these information silos, and we get enough, like someone who's coming in through New Age spirituality, they get enough. They don't have to learn about anything else. Someone who's on Skinny Talk gets enough. Someone, a Tradwife fan, or someone into clean beauty. So they don't even have to be comprehensive in what they're looking at. Any one thing can pull them into that side of the political aisle.
Right, absolutely. And that's what's so scary and why it's so powerful. And why we don't, unfortunately, have that ecosystem on the left. And unfortunately, it's because we're already naturally a disadvantage, because even to refute some of these talking points, it's nuance. All of this is nuanced. And the internet hates nuance, and people don't have time for nuance.
I know. Everyone who advised me on this podcast, by the way, it was like, you're covering too much stuff, or you're talking about this in too in depth. And I'm like, I don't want to change that. I recognize that will limit my audience, but this is the kind of content I believe in.
But for the right folks, it's going to hit. Right.
Do you feel that? Because you're really good at translating stuff, and you have to keep it short because you are doing short form content. So how do you negotiate that nuance into a short TikTok video?
So I script out a lot of my videos, not necessarily word for word, but I will make bullet points before I get on and film. And then I will, oh my gosh, if you should see, and maybe you could pick up on it just from this conversation, my brain goes 1,000 miles a minute. Yeah. So I will just film, and sometimes I'll have like a 10-minute video that I will edit down to a minute 30. I try not to go above a minute 30, a minute 40, because that's really when things start to dip. And even that is kind of longer form content for short form, for like an Instagram reel or a TikTok.
Yeah, people are going to be hitting the right side of their screen to like double speed it if they're...
Right, exactly, which take off for that little feature. And I get twofold, and this is critiques that I really like to hear from people, because I have some people say, you really break this down really easily to understand. I really get it now. This is engaging. This is like great content. And then I'll have some other people who say, I have no idea what you're talking about. Can you make this more of a 101? And that's really interesting to me, because I think a lot of times people in left-wing spaces in general, we want to educate, we want to quote peer-reviewed studies, we want to recommend these books, whatever. That's not what they're doing on the right at all.
No.
And so I don't want to I know definitely my content's a little bit more academic, but I want it to be accessible. I want it to be entertaining. I want it to be approachable. And that's why I love to do, my makeup or incorporate different trends, through it, and hoping that kind of catch, because that's another part of my love. I mean, we're all multifaceted. I love doing my makeup. I
Yeah.
love sparkles and pretty things.
See, and I think the medium is the message, to quote
Yeah.
Marshall McLuhan, this old like media theorist, is like when you do the thing of you're standing there showing your fit, right? So someone's looking at their phone, they see you full body kind of back away, just maybe like enjoying a drink or whatever. And then you've got all this text down the side and some music. So you're not saying anything. And your text, it like, I laugh because sometimes I'll see those and it's like shoes from here, dress from here, or like
right.
something about, they'll say something about work or something. And yours is like 12 ways that the right wing can,
Yes,
like
right.
trick you into being a moron or something. Like,
Yeah, exactly. It's like you didn't know this is what you're signing up for whenever you first do the
Yeah.
first 2 seconds.
but again, the medium is the message. Like, I think you're reaching people that like that aesthetic
hope
on the
so.
one hand, and also people that can see the irony in you kind of co-opting that. Because you're also like
right.
traditional woman. You look sort of, would you identify as like high femme? I don't know like how you talk
Yeah,
about your
definitely.
appearance, but yeah.
I mean, that's why sometimes I hear that I'm Republican passing, you know, so that's why I try to have these tattoos to kind
With the
of.
blonde hair too
Yeah,
and stuff. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. But I think I have a lot of privilege in this space in particular. I am able to say things and not get the same backlash that Black women, that trans women are saying in this space that have been saying it for a lot longer. So I try to always be very cognizant of that. I'm not the first one to, oh my God, by any means to be like saying any of this stuff. Everything that I've learned is from people who've been doing this work, you know, a lot longer than I have. But I also hope to use my privilege in this space to know that kind of the way that I do fit into the mold and the, you know, traditional gender norms,
Yeah.
you know, from
Yeah.
just the way, just first impression, be able to use that to my advantage to get the message across the best I can.
While you're doing that, do you experience harassment? I know
Yes.
your videos are getting hundreds of thousands of views. Yeah. You're getting like a lot of comments. How do you deal with all the comments and how do you deal with the harassment that happens?
It depends on the day. Oh my God, the comments are great. I mean, I definitely beyond get so much more positive feedback than negative.
Can you see all of them though? We're talking like 3,000 comments on a recent video. I'm like, I don't even know how you'd, yeah.
No, you know, I'm limited with, I would love to be even more engaged, you know, in my comment
Yeah.
section and DMs and things like that, hopefully one day. But no, and that's the thing is it is, especially when I first started and a lot of my videos started to pick up, it's easy to zero in on the crazy I mean, it is. I mean, it's crazy. Like some of the stuff you'll get and you kind of just have to laugh at some of it. And still, it depends on the day. Sometimes I literally don't care at all.
Do you get like vulgar stuff? Are like men harassing you? Are you getting like nasty stuff too?
Yeah, it's always men. Or sometimes it's women, but the worst ones are men who will say like violent, super misogynistic, just things. What upsets me and like what I never get upset personally that this person's like saying this to me. And if I did, I think that's totally fine too. But it's
Sure.
I get angry that this is what women have to deal with coming onto the internet and having a voice.
Yeah.
And it makes me angry that that's just people feel entitled to say things like this. And I know that going into it, but it just continues to reiterate these things that I'm trying to point out and talk about. And then so that just it's upsetting.
Are either the platforms Insta or TikTok better at
Instagram's way worse.
with AI now? It seems to me that they could just filter out crap. Like it should be able to just recognize this person's harassing this person. So just don't even send that through.
Instagram got rid of all of their moderation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's the other thing of, I mean, we didn't even get into this, but all of these tech bros who are controlling these algorithms are in bed with the Trump administration.
Yeah. They were at the inauguration.
Yeah, exactly. And then even TikTok, who whenever it was banned for 24 hours, we get back online, everyone served a notification. Thank you to President Trump for
Thank you,
so it's
President.
unbelievable.
Thank you, the guy who made TikTok
Go away in the first
thing
place.
that was gonna. Yeah,
It's unbelievable.
yeah.
So obviously these algorithms, we know what they prioritize and we know what's being censored.
So do you report bad comments? You just delete them? Like
I delete, I'll block sometimes, I'll just ignore.
Yeah.
It just depends. Instagram's way worse than TikTok. And Meta just in general is, and I think it's because what I've kind of come to the conclusion of is Instagram. I think TikTok is really good at feeding things to your bubble. It's kind of an echo chamber in TikTok for better or for worse. Instagram will see my content and it will want to feed it to whoever is going to give it the most engagement. And a lot of time,
yeah.
people are
Harassers.
that's people who's going to see it as rage bait. And
That's what happened to Twitter, but times 10. Like I had
oh
to basically
gosh.
stop using Twitter because I had this big account, Jazz Fans Against Racism, which was like about
Yeah.
the Utah Jazz and like talking to jazz fans about racism. And because it's in Utah, a very predominantly
Right.
white community. And after Musk took over, I mean, it
Disgusting.
became unusable, literally
Yes.
unusable. All of my mentions were racist, overtly racist
Yes.
slurs and
Yes.
harassment. And I wasn't getting put in front of the people who actually followed the account anymore.
Yep.
And it drove me right off the platform.
And that's what's so frustrating too, and why I'm talking about this too. It's not just social media anymore. Social media has such an impact on the outcome of our elections, on the outcome of our just public opinion, how we organize, how we disseminate information. It's all through socials now, and
Mhm.
and to see just such a grip and the amount of money and the huge infrastructure that the right has in getting this content out there and developing right-wing content creators to be able to recruit to their messaging. It's really a huge system that the right has
Mhm.
built, and that's why we're seeing it everywhere in combination with all of these other things that we talked about.
Yeah.
So
Luckily, you can still make them a little bit of money, so that's why they're not like completely
yeah, right,
just
right.
killing you off the
Just-
platform. But I do think it's probably still gamed against the kind of stuff that you do. And I also worry about the ownership issue. I think that's a real problem. And I started
Yeah.
using Blue Sky for that reason, but it's not a perfect place. It's pretty good, but it's also not quite the same. I don't know.
I need to get on Blue Sky,
They're
but
pretty different than TikTok and Instagram. And I think what you're doing there works. I think it's just a
Thank you.
different text-based, like
Right.
video's not going to do much on Blue Sky.
Right.
Anyway, well, that takes me to the last question for you is like, you're growing your influence, your account's blowing up. My account's small. I don't have I have more listeners than I have like social media
Yeah, that's
followers for
great.
sure. So what is your advice for people that use social media who aren't trying to be influencers
Yeah.
to improve their online experience? What kind of things do you suggest people do? Or to even become more influential in spreading the kind of stuff that you'd like to see spread?
Yeah, I think definitely I kind of have a series where I talk about if you like engaging with this certain type of content, look for these certain things versus these certain things. So, for instance, if you like the clean beauty space, look for things that are talking about beauty for sensitive skin or who are still using peer reviewed studies and aren't using fear based language in order to get their point across. If you like the idea of like trad wife living, look into creators who talk about anti-capitalism, who talk about sustainability, who talk about the environment, those types of things. I think there's still ways to engage with these ideas and these trends without them having to funnel to the alt-right. Because a lot of the times these things are reflective of larger issues that a lot of leftists are talking about in content and other things. So I think it's being cognizant of those couple of things. And I think also, too, just being really cognizant of misinformation. The misinformation out there is rampant. It's only going to get worse with AI. Really just making yourself aware of, it's really scary, really making yourself aware of how to spot misinformation, how to spot language that is meant to manipulate your emotions, and kind of how to do your own little fact checking. It's media literacy at the end of the day that's so important.
Do you have any go-to outlets where you pick up on that kind of stuff? Like I point people to check people's credentials, and that's not
Yes.
a guarantee that what people are saying is
No,
correct.
it's not.
But it does mean they're playing in the field where they're held responsible and held accountable and are more likely to correct when correction is needed.
Exactly, or some type of licensing board or something. What's
Yeah.
scary is that a lot of times people will throw out their credentials, but it will be something that totally is unrelated to
Yeah,
the area in which they're trying to
it
influence.
happens all the time.
And so
Jillian
really,
Michaels right now is like,
oh
what?
my God.
How is she a specialist on anything? But she's,
Exactly.
you know.
Truly. RFK Jr., period. You know?
Exactly. See, and I should have gone for him first. See, and also notice the sexism in me, like going after a woman first in the whole. So I'm still I'm still a work in
unlearning
progress
and
here. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. But Jillian Michaels is the worst, so I give you a pass.
Cool.
Yeah, so I mean, I think those are big things. And just understanding how like the scientific process works, I think too, and also look out for the fear-based language and making sure they're not just critiquing individual choices, but larger systems at play.
And I think that's a good general rule, even when we see the like terrible news or things that the left really cares about, to pause for a second and look into it. I've seen some stuff that's been blown out of proportion. I've seen some things that we actually don't need to be that worried about it right now, or if we keep calm about this. Now, sometimes we need to like shout and like something and feel what we're feeling. But I do think it's good to pause for a second, regardless of the content. Like you said, check what it's doing to us emotionally and really try to re-engage our minds in thinking through what's real, verifying stuff, and then just trying to figure out the best course of action. What can I do in my little limited sphere?
Right.
And that gives me a sense of control too, because there's so much I can't control.
Right. And then whenever you hear one of your friends or whatever sharing something that isn't based in, that maybe can lead down some of these alt-right pipelines, don't be afraid to gently call them in, call them out, whatever your style is.
They're like, hey, you want to go to American Eagle with me? They have a great ad campaign going on right now. And I'm going to go buy some jeans.
There's this pair of jeans I'm really interested in trying on.
Well, thanks. That's Jess Britvich, is a content creator, and she talks about internet culture and politics. She's a former social worker. She lives in Pittsburgh. You can follow her on TikTok and Instagram at Jess Britvich, Britvich. Jess, this has been a lot of fun, and I look forward to seeing your content. You make me feel young. You keep me kind of in the... I know what the kids are doing.
I'll send you all the hot trends so I can keep you up on what they're all talking about.
Yeah, I feel like that guy in the GIF that has like a skateboard and like a shirt that says rock band, and he's like, greetings, fellow kid.
What's his name? Steve Buscemi?
Yeah, Steve Buscemi.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, man. Well, thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Thank you. All right, I really enjoyed that interview, and the mood is going to shift now, and I don't really have any great way of transitioning here other than to say that I'm going to address some tough stuff right now. And this discussion involves gun violence and death. Around the 6-minute mark of our discussion, Jess mentioned Turning Point USA as an example of the alt-right, and I agreed with her. Little did we know that within about a week, Turning Point founder and conservative activist Charlie Kirk would be shot to death here in my home state of Utah. So this one really hit close to home in the sense that it happened in a place that I've been. I've walked through that courtyard many times. I worked at a university that's just a few miles away from Utah Valley University. I've presented papers there and attended conferences there. I have friends that are professors there, friends that are students there. I know people that were present when he was shot. And I have to say that his death affected me, but it didn't change my opinion or Jess's opinion about Charlie Kirk's work. And speaking out about that can have huge consequences right now. It certainly did for Jess after she made a video about Charlie Kirk's views in the aftermath of his death. But before I say more about that, I first want to emphasize that Charlie Kirk's murder was awful and tragic and disturbing, and I entirely reject that kind of political violence. It is never acceptable. And I was also disturbed to see many of the tributes to Mr. Kirk that poured out on social media and in the news. And I think it reflects something about American culture. A lot of us have been socialized to respond to death like this in a really civil way, to be reverent, to send our thoughts and prayers, to avoid speaking ill of the dead, to think about the loved ones that are left behind and pay our respects, or at the very least, to not raise any unsettling objections to whatever eulogies other people offer up. And it's just really taboo to go against this kind of public mourning, right? And on one hand, this seems quite humane. It suggests that we really value life. We empathetically recognize how painful it can be to lose a loved one. And I appreciate this collective approach generally, but I also think that it can raise some problems. One problem is that this culture of how we respond to death isn't always applied the same to everybody who dies. Consider some of the public reactions to the killing of Osama bin Laden, if you can remember that. I think it was like 2011 or so. Most people weren't concerned with the sanctity of human life categorically at that time. There were celebrations about bin Laden's death for the role he had in killing thousands in the 9/11 attack. Now, I'm not saying Charlie Kirk is Osama bin Laden. I'm saying consider the different ways that people grieve, or the different people that we believe are worthy of our public grief. Think about all the prominent voices right now calling for Kirk's murderer to face capital punishment. There's not much reverence for human life in general in that case, only for worthy human life. So our socialization to respect the dead is usually extended to a pretty limited in-group. When somebody dies who's done a lot of harm, they usually land outside the circle of proper death memorial. So what about the problem of reacting to the death of somebody who's deeply harmed you or people you love? I'm very familiar with what Charlie Kirk stood for, and there was a lot of bigotry, racism, queerphobia, and misogyny there. He said that women belong at home, not in the workforce. He insulted prominent and well-educated black women as being stupid. He said he gets worried if he sees a black airlines pilot because he falsely believes they probably got some kind of cheat code to pass up white people who would deserve the job more. He called the Civil Rights Act a huge mistake. That was one of the most important pieces of legislation in U.S. history. He said that God's perfect law in the Bible called for the stoning and killing of queer people, and that while he wouldn't necessarily want that to become law in the U.S., he did agree with it as God's perfect law. And these weren't isolated statements. I'm not just grabbing things out of context. These ideas were mainstays of his worldview, a worldview in which he feared that white people in the United States are being squashed out by people of color and immigrants, and that it's important for us to stop that trend. So people who are issuing general calls for respect or civility or unity in response to his death, a death which, again, I just want to say I condemn in the strongest terms, those folks want everybody to pretend like his hateful ideology either didn't exist or that it's not as important as these culturally approved ways of responding to death. But I can't unify in memorial rituals with people who knew what Charlie Kirk stood for and who agree with him. Or with people who know what he stood for but just make excuses for it, like, okay, he was a flawed person but otherwise wonderful, a Christian and a family man. I can't stand together with people who think he was simply being taken out of context because I know that simply isn't true. These are facts. He spread extremely racist, misogynistic, and queerphobic views that still influence and resonate with hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people in this country. Many of his followers will deny that he's a purveyor of those things, but it's true. And I think it's right to be disturbed, shocked, and dismayed by what happened to him, to reject violence like that out of hand, not to take any glee in it. But I also recognize the depths of the pain people feel from the hatred that he spread, and I see its ongoing impact, and I have to keep denouncing it. I don't want our cultural scripts, our cultural expectations on how to react to death to overpower our greater sense of justice and safety for marginalized people. So again, I talked to Jess Britvich days before the shooting occurred, and after the shooting, Jess went on TikTok and created a video about how Kirk had contributed to the context in which he was killed. And this is an argument that has to be carefully made because we're not interested in blaming the victim here. But I do think it's fair to point out that Charlie Kirk favored policies that directly impact gun violence in the United States. He unwittingly became one of the people who he said would be sacrificed in order to safeguard the Second Amendment from firearm control efforts. And I never wanted that. I don't want that for him. I don't want that for anyone. But as news of Kirk's death spread, some of his followers started a doxing and harassment campaign. They were going after people with large social media followings, people like Jess Britvich. And they contacted workplaces and demanded people be terminated. And Jess was one of the people who lost their jobs in the aftermath. Here's her reaction to that on TikTok.
Even knowing what happened, I would post that video and every video I've posted here 1,000 times over. And while I'm disappointed that my employer chose to let me go during a coordinated doxing campaign, I'm not shocked. And this video isn't about my former employer, so please just don't bother them. That's not my intent because this isn't about me and my former employer. This is about the current culture we're living in where the Overton window has shifted so far right, where speaking out against the regime is seen as radical, especially if there's a perception that that might harm the bottom line. So it creates a culture where silence is rewarded. And the far right has spent years creating a machine that punishes anyone who speaks out against the system. I mean, think of Turning Point's very own Professor Watchlist that targeted whoever taught what Turning Point deemed to be left propaganda. It's meant to scare companies, schools, institutions into submission because they know if they can make challenging the system feel dangerous, and when I say the system, I mean white supremacy, Christian nationalism, patriarchy. The fear will do the work for them because it preemptively scares people into complying in advance. It's how capitalism and white supremacy and Christian nationalism work hand in hand. It creates an economy and a job market where workers are reliant on their employers. It makes them afraid of losing their livelihoods. Here's the thing, I'll be fine. Now, don't get me wrong, we're not really in the position for me to be losing my job. It hurts, but I'll be fine. I'm shielded in ways that trans individuals, the Black community, Palestinians have never been. They have been putting their bodies on the line, risking their jobs, risking their safety for generations. This moment feels shocking for a lot of white people because we've mostly been insulated from the fight. Having privilege means putting ourselves in situations that are uncomfortable because our advocacy means nothing if we abandon it whenever there's actually something at stake. I have a lot more to say about my personal experience, about this current moment, about McCarthyism, about how I think a lot of these doxing attempts are in response to COVID and the Black Lives Matter movement as like revenge. Because I have more time now, I'm going to be saying a lot of that on Substack. My first long form video is already up. The long version is behind a paywall for a couple reasons. One, because I did lose my job, but also because I want to keep trolls out and use this as a space to really build community for people who want to dive deeper into these discussions. I'd love if you subscribed. Regardless, from the bottom of my heart, want to thank everybody here who's helped me build this platform, who's in this fight. It gives me hope.
And I think what she said is true. We have to be willing to say uncomfortable things and be bold right now, even though it's hard and it can be really scary. So I recommend checking out her new Substack and also just following her on TikTok or Instagram as well. Jess, thanks a lot for being with us and best wishes as you're moving forward. All right, on that happy note, I'm Blair Hodges, a journalist in Salt Lake City. Mates of State provides our theme song, and we have another full episode of Relationscapes coming up for you next week. See you then.